This country is in a revolution. They're sick and tired of what they're getting, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it.
It has been said that when in the course of human events, an oppression so revolts its subject that it becomes necessary to alter or abolish the means of that tyranny. Is it that time when our Bill of Rights is defiled every day? When our adventures abroad threaten our security at home? When the Federal Reserve keeps our free nation enslaved by debt? When the people of the world tremble under the thumb of corporate imperialism? And now, our nation is drifting dangerously from freedom to fascism. So I have to ask, is it time?
And now, from the luxurious albino raccoon recording studios located in the Midwestern heart of America, it's the Last Voice for Liberty Network. And here's your host, The Mouth.
Greetings and salutations to all my fellow patriots. It is time. The Last Voice for Liberty Network back on the air. I am, of course, your host, The Mouth, laughing and scratching at you today, the 8th day of February, 2013. Folks, the police state is taking over. It's become none more prevalent than in how we have given up our liberties in sake of safety.
Are you off your fucking meds or something?
To a bunch of overzealous, overanxious. There's police around this country that they feel the tension growing from the American public towards the government. And, you know, on one hand, the government's telling the police what they're supposed to be doing. And it's a big sordid mess, really. But it's become really prevalent out here with this manhunt going on for this police officer, Chris Dorner, who apparently killed a couple. And
1069er, we got whores in the city. We need backup now.
He apparently put his whole manifesto in full online here. We've got it right here in the Albino Raccoon Recording Studios. You know, it says,
All systems go!
I know most of you personally know me, are in disbelief to hear from media reports that I am suspected of committing such horrendous murders and have taken drastic and shocking actions in the last couple of days. You are saying to yourself that this is completely out of character of the man that you knew, who always wore a smile wherever he was seen. I know I will be vilified by the LAPD and the media. Unfortunately, this is a necessary evil that I do not enjoy but must partake and complete for substantial change to occur within the LAPD and reclaim my name. The department has not changed since the Rampart and Rodney King days. It has gotten worse. Said the consent decree should never have been lifted. The only thing that has evolved from the consent decree is those officers involved in the Rampart scandal and Rodney King incidents have since been promoted to supervisor commanders and command staff and executive positions. The question is, what do you do to clear your name? Now, a name is a set of words by which a person, animal, place, or thing is known, addressed, or referred to.
You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
It has various synonyms such as a reputation, title, appellation, denomination, repute. A name is more than just a noun. An adjective, or a verb, or an adjective. It's your life, your legacy, your journey, sacrifices, and everything you've worked hard for every day of your life as an adolescent, young adult, and adult. Now, don't let anybody tarnish it when you know you've live up to your own set of ethics and personal ethos. Now, he goes on to say, in August of 2007, I reported an officer, who is now a sergeant, for kicking a suspect with using excessive force during a use of force while I was assigned as a patrol officer at LAPD's Harbor Division. And while cuffing the suspect, the name has been deleted, of course, so-and-so kicked the suspect twice in the chest and once in the face. The kick to the face left a visible injury on the left cheek below the eye. Unfortunately, after reporting it to supervisors and investigated by and having it investigated by PSB, which is Internal Investigator Affairs Detective, and they left his name out, of course, nothing was done. I had broken their supposed blue line. Unfortunately, it is not just us, it's justice. In fact, 10 months later, on June 25th of 2008, after already successfully completing probation, acquiring a basic post certificate and intermediate post certificate, I was relieved of duty by the LAPD while assigned to patrol at Southwest Division. It is clear as day that the department retaliated toward me for reporting blank for kicking Mr. So-and-so. The department stated that I had lied and made up the report that he had kicked the suspect. I later went to the Board of Rights, the department hearing for decision of continued employment from October of 2008 to January of 2009. During this Board of Rights hearing, a video was played for the Board of Rights panel where blank stated that he was indeed kicked by Officer blank. Okay? This video was sent to multiple news agencies. I'm scanning down, folks. I'm trying to read this. This just came in. And in addition to blank stating he was kicked, his father, and he names him, also stated that his son had stated he was kicked by an officer when he was arrested after being released from custody. This was all presented for the department at the Board of Rights hearing. They still found me guilty and terminated me. What they didn't mention was that the Board of Rights panel was made up of captain, and he goes on to name two captains, a city attorney, had a significant problem from the time the board was assembled. Captain Blank was a personal friend of so-and-so from when he was a supervisor at the Harbor Station. So in other words, he goes on to say that it's a clear conflict of interest and made my argument for people's removal early, and it was denied. So they denied his argument for the conflict of interest because these people had all worked together before. They're all intertwined.
Don't tell anybody I'll kill you!
That's what I'm trying to... He's got so many blanks because he's naming all these people in this. And so I'm trying to get this across.
I think you fucked.
Their people had worked at the Harbor Division. They worked patrol together. And all his requests and argument for removals due to conflicts of interest were denied, apparently. During the Board of Rights hearing, the department attempted to label me unsuccessfully as a bully. They stated that I had bullied a recruit, another name is posted, blanked out again, in the academy when in reality, an unfounded disposition from the official 1.28 formal complaint investigation found that I was the one who stood up for some blank again when other recruits sang Nazi Hitler Youth songs about burning Jewish ghettos in World War II Germany, where his father was a survivor of a concentration camp. How fucking dare you attempt to label me with such a nasty, vile word? I ask that all earnest journalists investigating this story ask officer, and the name's blanked out, about the incident when another officer's name blanked out again, began singing a Nazi youth song about burning Jewish ghettos.
Hey, that's a joke, son.
The internal affairs investigation in the academy involving another name blanked out was spurred by a complaint that I had initiated toward two fellow recruits officers. Now, while assigned patrol footbeat in Hollywood Division, officers blank and blank, both current LAPD officers, decided that they would voice their personal feelings about the black community. Now, while traveling back to the station in a 12-passenger van, I heard another name blanked out referred to another individual as a nigger. I wasn't sure if I heard correctly, as there were many conversations in the van that compiled of at least 8 officers, and he was sitting in the very rear and me in the front. Even with multiple conversations and ambient noise, I heard so-and-so called an individual a nigger again. Now I had confirmed it. I told him not to use that word again. I explained that it was a well-known offensive word and it should not be used by anyone. And he replied, "I'll say it when I want."
Okay, fuckface. First, take a big step back and literally fuck your own face!
He said, "I'll say it when I want," quote unquote. Officer Blank, a friend of his, also stated that he would say nigger when he wanted. At that point, I jumped over my front passenger seat and the two other officers where I placed my hands around such and such's neck and squeezed. I stated to another name blank out, don't fucking say that. And at that point, there was pushing and shoving, and we were separated by several other officers. What I should have done was put a Winchester Ranger SXT 9mm 147 grain bullet in his skull, and Officer Blank's skull. Now, remember, folks, this man's manifesto, Christopher Dorner's manifesto. I don't want to get confused that this is me saying this or anything else. I'm reading it straight off of the page here for it. Now, the sad thing about this incident, he goes on to say, was that when Detective Blank from Internal Affairs investigated this incident, only one officer, whose name is unknown, obviously, because they write unknown, in the van, other than myself, had statements consistent with what actually happened. The other 6 officers all stated they heard nothing and saw nothing. Shame on every one of you, he says. Says, shame on detective, and he goes on to name some more names for creating a separate 1.28 formal complaint against me, and in retaliation for initiating the complaint. And don't retaliate against honest officers for breaking your so-called blue line. He goes on to say, I hope your son, who I knew, is a better officer than you. Detective Blank, the saddest part of this ordeal was that officer so-and-so were only given 22-day suspensions and are still LAPD officers to this day. That day, the LAPD stated that it is acceptable for fellow officers to call black officers niggers to their face, and you will receive a slap on the wrist. Even sadder is that during that 22-day suspension, and blank and blank received, that is the LAPPL, the Los Angeles Police Protective League, paid the officers their salaries while they were suspended. Well, I took a 2-day suspension for an accidental discharge. He said, I took my suspension and never applied for a league salary. It's called integrity. And it goes down here. Let me get scrolled up here. This apparently, he's making allegations against all these people for racism and the LA Police Department for allowing it to continue or perhaps perpetrating it. He goes on to say, that's what I'm getting from it. I can give my 2 cents here, while I'm trying to scroll up. I'm trying to fill dead air time so then it's not hearing your stupid movie quotes all the time.
You bet back off. I'm getting a little pissy.
Now, he goes on to say, journalist, I want you to investigate every location I resided in growing up. Find any incidents where I was ever accused of being a bully. You won't because it doesn't exist. It's not in my DNA, never was. I was the only black kid in each of my elementary school classes from 1st grade to 7th grade and junior high, and any instances where I was disciplined or fighting was in response to fellow students provoking common childhood schoolyard fights, or calling me a nigger or other derogatory racial names. I grew up in neighborhoods where blacks made up less than 1%. My first recollection of racism was in the 1st grade at Norwalk Christian Elementary School in Norwalk, California. A fellow student, and he goes on to name all the names. Blank again. I'm not saying nobody's names because they're not written there. It's just dashes. Now, I can recall a fellow student, he says, in Norwalk, California, he said, if I can recall, called me a nigger on the playground. My response was swift and non-lethal. I struck him fast and hard with a punch and a kick. He cried and reported it to a teacher. The teacher reported it to the principal. The principal swatted so-and-so for using a derogatory word towards me. Then, for some unknown reason, swatted me for striking him in response to calling me a nigger. He stated, as good Christians, we are to turn the other cheek, as Jesus did. Now, the problem is, he says, I'm not a fucking Christian, and that old book made up of fiction and limited nonfiction called the Bible never once stated Jesus was called a nigger. Now, how dare you swat me for standing up for my rights, for demanding that I be treated as an equal human being? That day, I made a life decision that I will not tolerate racial derogatory terms spoken to me. Unfortunately, I was swatted multiple times for the exact same reason up until junior high. Terminating me for telling the truth of a Caucasian officer kicking a mentally ill man is disgusting. Don't ever call me a fucking bully. I want all journalists to utilize every source that you have that specializes in collections for your reports. Now, with the discovery and evidence available, you will see the truth you will see the truth, he said. Unfortunately, I will not be alive to see my name cleared. That is what this is about. My name. A man is nothing without his name. Below is a list of locations I resided from childhood to adulthood. I'm not going to get into all.
What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?
Boy, this goes on fucking ever.
What?
I'm not reading this whole thing on the show. I'll be sitting here reading for the next 2 hours. Apparently, this man's manifesto, and the reason that he's gone on to apparently commit these crimes or whatever, is because of the hatred that he's felt through racism.
Now, darkness, the tables are turned. Do with him whatever you like.
So where do we stand on this, folks? I mean,
Something stinks like stale French fries.
we try to advocate, I'm talking to we, the people, the citizens of America as a society, we try to advocate being tolerant of one another. I think, for Christ's sakes, to say that people being, number one, racist is foolish because we're all the human race, so it's kind of a foolish and misleading term, which, don't get me started on those. But, you know, it's a touchy fucking subject. I mean, it really is. Yeah, it's because the crime of slavery and judging a man, you know, based on his skin color is not, it's as old as time. And I would think that by this day and age, we would have at least, we've crawled far enough away from that hole as a majority of society has, I'll have to say. I'd have to say that the bigoted folks who are discriminatory against others for their color and use these foolish terms, you know, that's why I didn't want to read the rest of this, because I don't want to say the N-word anymore. I can't stand saying it, to be quite honest. It makes my flesh crawl. I think it's a stupid word, because it's just a word used. And while it is just a word, and by all means, anybody has the right to walk around and say it. It's freedom of speech is one of our protected rights. You can say whatever you want. Now, there will be consequences for walking around and saying this stuff. But all intents and purposes, I believe it's a terrible word. It's a symbolistic word of an oppression that should be long forgotten.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
With all the opportunities presented towards people of any color in this country nowadays, to continue to perpetrate racism and hate people because of their skin. Especially these guys are police officers.
You're no good motherfucker.
You know? And they say that there's no racial profiling. Well, why is 65% of the prison population black?
He's a Negro.
And you know, how many black inmates are in there for nonviolent drug offenses again? I guarantee you it's statistically, gigantically higher than there is white criminals or white inmates in there for nonviolent drug offenses. Is it because that we have officers like this, as this disgruntled officers complaining about, calling people niggers and kicking people in the face? Is that why? Because police officers need to be able to make the distinction that, hey, just because they're a certain color doesn't mean that they're causing a crime. And you don't have to get down and beat down on them.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
The drug war is a big, additive to this, because it fuels the illegality and the money-making ability that you have of selling illegal drugs.
No, I will not sell my own mother!
So, black people who are largely still discriminated against in a lot of places. I wish I could say that everybody thought like me, but they don't. It's not your fault. It's genetic.
You weren't even born with the sense God gave the common dog.
But dear Lord, it's 2013. When are we going to get it through our heads? I mean, the science has existed for 1,000,000 years. But when are we going to get it since the dawn of man? The science has existed that a person's outer skin hides the same internal makeup as everyone else.
What will your world be without me?
Basic, heart, lungs, brain, blood, guts. It's all the same, whether you're white, black, yellow, green, purple. It's all the damn same, because we're all human beings.
When I am gone, you will never be.
Fighting each other and continuing to belittle people because of the color of their skin.
What a shitload of fuck.
I don't want to say without being too awfully offensive here. Fucking retarded. What? I mean, it's absolutely stupid. And don't even try to get all PC on me talking about, you're offending handicapped people now. No, I'm not. Handicapped people are handicapped. Fucking retarded is being a racist in 2013. Fucking retarded is worrying about
Sweet mother of God, what is the holdup?
Fucking retarded is these cops that are going out that cut because they don't want all this stuff exposed, apparently.
Tell them, McCluskey. Tell them what time it is.
And they're killing people. Innocent people.
Shoot them all and let God sort them out.
On this manhunt. They're raiding people's homes and searching people's homes without permission. Looking for this guy. I'll tell you what, you come to my door. When you're on a manhunt for somebody else, you come to my door and say, we need to come in and search your house. He might be in here. No, I know who's in my house.
Say hello to my dear friend!
And I'm sorry, but if you've seen the pictures of this gentleman on the news or anywhere else, he's not a small guy. He's not going to slip in unnoticed. He's not inconspicuous. It's not as if he's a set of fucking car keys.
Settle down, baby.
He is a large man. If a large man comes into my house anywhere, I'll know. Okay? I don't need you to come in and look for me. To perfect and to keep me safe. They're raiding the people's homes. They shot a newspaper delivery woman.
Shut the fuck up!
A newspaper delivery woman. Mistaken for this guy's not small.
You stupid, ignorant son of a bitch, dumb bastard!
2 women that were delivering newspapers in a truck were struck by gunfire. Anything that resembles this guy's truck. Now, I've seen pictures here where they've got pictures of his supposed truck all burned up and abandoned. Tires it's all burnt to shit.
If my answers frighten you, Vincent, then you should cease asking scary questions.
I am going to rip off your head and shit down your neck.
And that was on the, yesterday? The 7th of February? See if I can get a date on this motherfucker right here.
Finish the fucking story, man.
Yep. February 7th. They had already shot a woman. And they riddled the pickup with bullet holes. I read this the other day and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is getting crazy. These guys are just out here shooting at everything.
This is a fucked up Republican shit.
Now, they ran another innocent person off the road and shot their car up.
Fuck the police. Fuck the police. Yo, fuck the police. Fuck the police. Yo, fuck them.
Today, folks, they already said that they found his vehicle all burned up.
Fire! 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 Fire!
And this man is taking them to war. That's exactly what the gist of his manifesto said, is that he's ready he's going to use all his knowledge of small arms and self-defense and tactical everything that he's learned against this corrupt racist system that he claims. Now, once again, folks, this is this man's claims as to why he's going around doing this. Is it right? Fuck no, dude. Maybe. I mean, maybe if this supposed racist corruption that's going on is actually what's going on, maybe it is right. Maybe he's got every right to go out and retaliate against this injustice that his superiors above him refuse to see. That's if it's all true. But this is just his account against everyone else's account. It's pretty easy to continue to back up his stats with back up his accusations of racism with actual jail stats and incarceration, rates, as it occurs to, black individuals, and police brutality claims that have gone on. A lot of statistical things need to be analyzed in order for something like this to become justified, which is basically what his manifesto is asking everyone to do. I have to justify this, and I need all you supposed journalists out there to investigate into it. So let's take a fair look at the facts before we go accusing him of being insane or being crazy, because he might not be. You never know. Maybe this shit is actually happening, and maybe he's legitimized in having to fight back against it because no one will listen. Everyone turning a blind eye and trying to shun him, knowing that possibly his life might be in danger. You never know, folks. You never know exactly what's going through the mind of a person when they get pushed to the brink. And whether it's themselves pushing themselves to the breaking point or outside forces pushing them to the breaking point, everyone gets, when they take drastic measures like this, it's because they've been pushed to the breaking point. America itself is almost at the breaking point, if you want my honest opinion. We got to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back here on The Last Voice.
Getting so much resistance from behind. I think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs. Mostly say hooray for our side. It's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Paranoia strikes deep into your life, it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. You step out of line, the man come and take you away. You better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Gentlelady from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, this time I please yield 3 minutes to my distinguished colleague from Texas, Mr. Paul.
Gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered. Gentleman may proceed.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I rise to express my support for this rule. It's a fair rule. There's plenty of room for debate and room for amendment. I would like to congratulate the Appropriations Committee for doing something very important in this bill by deleting all the funding for selective service system. I think that's very important. And as was described by the gentlelady earlier, there will be an attempt early on. The First Amendment will come to the floor, will be to put that money back in. And I would like my colleagues to consider very seriously not to do that, because there is no need for the selective service system. There is only one purpose for the selective service system, and that is to draft young 18-year-olds. That is unfair. There is no such thing as a fair draft system. It's always unfair to those who are less sophisticated, who either avoid the draft or are able to get into the National Guard, or as it was in the Civil War, pay to get their way out. The draft is a 20th century phenomenon, and I am delighted to see and very pleased that the Appropriations Committee saw fit to delete this money, because this, to me, is reestablishing one of the American traditions that we do not believe in conscription. Conscription and drafting is a totalitarian idea. And I would like to remind many of my conservative colleagues that if we brought a bill to this floor where we would say that we would register all our guns in the United States, there would be a hue and cry about how horrible it would be. And yet we casually accept this program of registering 18-year-old kids to force them to go and fight the political wars that they're not interested in. This is a very, very serious idea and principle of liberty. So when the time comes in September to vote for this, I beg that my fellow colleagues will think seriously about this. The needlessness to spend $25 million to continue to register young people to go off to fight needless wars. They're not even permitted to drink beer, and yet we expect them to be registered and yet to use them to fight the wars that the older generation starts for political and narrow-minded reasons. So when the time comes in September, please consider that there are ways that you can provide for an army without conscription. We've had the reinstitution of registration and draft for 20 years. It's been wasted money. We can save the $25 million. We should do it. We should not put this money back in. We do not need the selective service system. I yield back.
Has expired.
6'4", full of muscles. I said, do you speak my language? He just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich. And he said, I come from a land down under, where we just blow one bench under. Can you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. I said to the man, are you trying to tempt me? Because I come from a land of plenty. And he said, I come from a land down under, where women go.
And welcome back to The Last Voice for Liberty Network. I am your host, The Mouth, folks.
Has my fame preceded me, or was I too quick for it?
Talk about the gentleman, the police officer that is suspected of killing people, and basically wrote up this manifesto about how the LA Police Department is propagating and continuing on racism, and this is his reasons for going on whatever type of rampage he's going on, or had planned on, or whatever. Now the police investigating it, raiding people's houses and saying, we need to search your house to see if he's in here for your safety. Like I said, it's not as if this guy is, tiny. He seems to be a well-proportioned individual, which would make him pretty inconspicuous. Sneaking in somebody's house is why the police think that they need to go and search people's houses if he's there. That's bullshit. It's just recon. It's the old liberal playbook, page number 113, I believe it is, authored by Mr. Rahm Emanuel. You know, never waste a good crisis. Never let a good crisis go to waste.
I bet you're the kind of guy that would fuck a person in the ass and not even have the goddamn common courtesy to give him a reach around.
Segment today, I got to make it kind of short. But I wanted to talk about the tweet that's supposedly put out by Ron Paul about Chris Kyle, the Navy sniper who was killed. So much has been made of it. About this alleged tweet. I can't say that Ron Paul did it because I wasn't right there watching over Ron Paul's shoulders, watching him type in the tweet, and then him looking over at me, giving me a little wink and sending it. Okay? I didn't see it, so I can't say he did it. You know, in this day and age, who the fuck knows? Okay! But the comment said that Chris Kyle's death seems to confirm that he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. And treating post-traumatic stress disorder at a firing range doesn't make sense. If you recall it, he was killed at a gun range while attempting to help a young soldier with post-traumatic stress disorder relieve some stress, apparently, by going out shooting or something like that. Chris Kyle, you know, he was Navy sniper, of course. Now, people in the media are all over it. They love any time that they can try and get a shot or a dig in at Ron Paul because to them, it's attacking the liberty movement. They believe that Ron Paul is the liberty movement. Okay? So if they attack him and discredit him, it's a discredit to all of us. And that's what they're trying to push across. And I've talked to liberals and Republicans both alike. So your hero and savior, Ron Paul, have said this, and everybody said that.
Oh, bitch.
Ron Paul's his own fucking man. He awakened a lot of us to the ideals and the principles of liberty. But he also said it is up to us as to how we put them in. If he wants to make a comment about Chris Kyle, which, let me tell you this, folks, it's not false.
You people got no respect for the brain dead?
He lived by the sword. Through coercion of the government.
You're way off. I say you're way off this time, son.
They continually interpret him as being disrespectful and driving a wedge right through the heart of the liberty movement. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Just as we had with fucking the Alex Jones and Pierce Morgan brouhaha, it's boiled over in the public opinion courts, and all the haters are focusing, you know, how, like they did with Alex Jones, on how he acted and not what he said. Now we find ourselves repeating our same mistakes with Dr. Paul's quote-unquote tweet, focusing on what he said instead of why he said it. Now Ron Paul, a champion of liberty, good Christian doctor. Why would he come out and say something that seems so cold and callous? But the fact is, from all logical and realistic standpoints, what Ron Paul said is true. That's the thing about the truth, folks. Sometimes it fucking hurts. Everyone keeps pissing and moaning about what he said, all the while failing to understand why he said it. Our government's foreign policy has led us down this road of tyranny and response. The latter is being more accurately termed to as blowback. The idea that we can go around the globe and force our ways upon the rest of the planet, claiming to be the supreme authority to police the world without any resistance from it, is to say the very least naive. Our government's willingness to engage in preemptive war, and our willingness as a country to allow them to, cast a tyrannical shadow to the rest of the world, painting the American public to be, just as evil as just as evil as our government is to many people around the world, are guilty of being just too blinded by our own materialistic desires and too willfully ignorant to see and stop our government's oppression. Now, when our government sends good, patriotic young men to be their weapon of tyranny by manufacturing a vastly encompassing enemy called terror, telling that these soldiers that the American people and our preemptive aggression is the only way to save their lives. invoking fear and anger in them to make them believe what they're doing is right, not alluding to the obvious facts about blowback and the possibilities of it coming from this aggressive behavior. The U.S. government, for years, has lived by the principles that war makes money, and they treat it as a business. Hell, the United States was instituted as established as a corporation in 1871. But there are two major flaws in this line of thinking, folks, that war is a business. Especially nowadays in today's administration. Number one, we're not at war. War must be declared with 2/3 of approval from Congress, and that hasn't happened since the 40s. Number two, the people who are running our government actually right now don't have the slightest clue how to run a successful business, and the financial burden from this war that really isn't a war monumentally outweighs any safety attained by these invasions and drone bombings, especially on the sovereign countries and their citizens. In fact, it may make us more vulnerable to blowback as a populace, as it drives further disdain toward America, coupled with the spreading of our military across the globe, making the people of our great land susceptible from outside violence. Our foreign policy crafts these Americans like Chris Kyle into believing that their cause is just, and that the common instinct as an American to be the very best at what you do caused him to take pride in his accomplishments. Where he wrote a book as to how many people he had killed and how many successful enemies he had targeted and killed. Now again, all the while he's remaining forcibly blinded to the threat of blowback, thanks to the re-education from our government. Now he indeed was living by the sword, folks, acting as the force of the American government, brainwashed by the globalists who have had one agenda on their mind, and that is a one-world government. Ron Paul's comment says, in plain English for all of you that are having trouble, our foreign policy killed Chris Kyle. Now, it's on this rare occasion that I do actually disagree with Dr. Paul. I believe Mr. Kyle was actually murdered by the Department of Homeland Security, to be quite honest, as a two-pronged attack against the Tea Party and Liberty Movement. Silencing Chris Kyle in his pro-Second Amendment stance at a gun range serves as a convenient, not convincing, convenient argument for anti-gun zealots. Now, secondly, knowing what type of poster boy, for lack of a better term, that he is to members of both the Tea Party and Liberty movements, as an American soldier that everyone wants to support. But there's also the controversy with which some of his opinions and actions, aka his whole thing with Jesse Ventura, have been met with in the past. It's going to serve the government best by dividing us as a people even further. Folks, we're all pawns in the game, and Chris Kyle was no exception. That served everybody well to do two things, folks. Number one, remember that in chess, the pawns are used as disposable heroes, wasted at a moment's notice to ensure the survival of the powers that be. Number two, they would kill us all if the survival of one of us meant that they would lose 1 ounce of their power. Don't think that for 1 second, folks, they won't do it a little bit at a time. We've got to start looking at the real root causes of these problems we face as a nation, the consequences of allowing our government to do as it pleases, the consequences of our lack of involvement in holding our elected officials to their oaths, and our blatant disregard for enforcing the rules that bind the government as laid out in the Constitution. Now, arguing amongst ourselves and getting all worked up over Ron Paul simply stating the truth distracts us from what's really important. What Chris Kyle and all our other soldiers fight for and believe in. That the utmost manifestation of love and respect for America is today, as it always has been, folks, resistance of tyranny. We'll talk to you next time on The Last Voice for Liberty Network.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. The utmost manifestation of love and devotion to America is today, as it always has been, resistance of tyranny.